So looking at a different type of policy now, supply side policies. So if we just think back to our demand side policies, fiscal policies and monetary policies, there's actually conflict between them. If we think about those top four objectives of the government, they want positive economic growth, they want low unemployment, they want low and stable inflation, and they want a good current account position. Now, those things, growth, employment, and good current account position, are kind of contrasted against demand pull inflation, as in to achieve these through demand side policies, you can achieve these, but you're going to cause this one. So there's a conflict. It's sort of like, well, which one do you want to achieve? And there's been a question asked on the exam before about this. I think it was only about 4 marks, but have a look, or it might have been about 6 marks actually, or comment on questions. So have a look at that from a past paper and see what types of things you can write for that from the mark scheme. So supply side policies, I just bring it up because supply side policies don't have this same conflict. They're designed to always increase aggregate supply, and they do this by improving the efficiency of labour and product markets. So it always increase aggregate supply. So this is what would happen. Aggregate supply would shift outwards, and we have this fall in the price level, so technically deflation there, but more likely to be disinflation, and you get growth as well at the same time. Yay. Why would you get an increase in employment? It's usually about increasing employment rather than just necessarily reducing unemployment, because remember, unemployment is that distance between where you're actually operating and the full capacity. So, it's quite complicated there. I think actually I've increased unemployment there just because more people have entered the labour market, but employment has definitely increased. So labour force has increased, and the economic growth means more workers are required to produce the additional output. We've got an increase in real GDP because the maximum potential capacity of the economy is increased. We've got a decrease in the price level, so downwards pressure on prices because total supply in the economy is increased. And the current account means that, these falling prices will increase the international competitiveness of our products. So that's why we've got this movement along the aggregate demand curve. And obviously the movement along the aggregate demand curve, when we're looking at kind of growth, like the kind of cheaper falling prices as well, encourages consumption. So let's have a look at, well, what are those policies? There are absolutely loads and loads of policies. So these are not just the only ones. There's loads in the book, so you can read about them. But I usually tell my students to pick a few so that they can, and that they know them really well and they can write about them well. So education and training, big supply side policy. So it makes your workforce more productive. It can also enable people to enter the workforce, so you increase your quantity of the workforce. So hopefully you increase the output or potential output, and you have kind of this growth, this outward shift of your aggregate supply curve. Reduction in trade union power reduces, well, it may not reduce the wage rate, but it may reduce pressure on the wage rate, so upwards pressure, reducing that. So that reduces running costs for firms, or slows the growth in costs for firms, and means that firms can produce more output with the same resources. Deregulation should make it easier and cheaper to set up businesses, so the quality and the quantity of capital should increase, and enterprise should increase, so potential output increases as well. And privatisation should improve efficiency because there's a profit motive, and that improves the quantity and the quality of your output and capital and enterprise and all of those things. So you get this outward shift in aggregate supply. So how effective are these policies? So let's have a look at these diagrams. Like, yeah, on this left-hand side, they're pretty effective because you've got some growth and you've got downwards pressure on the price level as well. But here, where there's lots of spare capacity in your economy, I don't know why my equilibrium's slightly off there, but it's probably something to do with the whiteboard when I drew it. But here, we've got lots of spare capacity and it doesn't have any effect on the economy. So you've got to be near to full capacity for it to be most effective. There's also a really big time lag between some of these things as well. So if we go back, education and training. So if you change primary education, you're only going to see the effectiveness of that in terms of productivity increases in, I don't know, 20 years' time. So that's a really long time, and it's also very unlikely that the political party that implemented those changes in primary school education are still going to be in power, and very unlikely that the people in those positions, like education minister, they're not going to still be education minister. So there's a bit of a disincentive, I suppose, for politicians to implement these long-term policies, because, you know, for voters, they need to have some quick wins, so to speak. And there's also a disagreement over whether some policies work, so whether national minimum wage actually helps supply side, because it's meant to increase the incentive to enter the labour market. And whether privatisation actually works, this is a big topic for A2. Is privatisation effective or not? And reducing trade union power, well, kind of already did that in the 80s, so not going to be able to reduce that too much more. There's a fantastic page on this in the textbook, so I recommend you read that through. Let's have a look at some essays. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some essays that have come up on supply-side policies. So discuss the extent to which supply-side policies can be effective in reducing inflation. So essay from a long time ago, that one, winter 2009. You know, a good student might break down inflation into different types of inflation as well, and discuss whether an increase in government spending on education will always increase a country's growth rate. So that was a nice question. My students that did that one actually really disliked that question. But you've got a bit of fiscal policy in there as well, but it's also supply side policy. So lots and lots to analyse there. But will it always increase a country's growth rate? So interesting element to that one.